If you keep dressing him like he's going to the North Pole, he's going to sweat through his coat before we even leave this hotel. Miracle Chitty didn't look up from the small boy currently trying to escape his own jacket like it had personally wronged him. Hold still, my love, or I will zip your nose into this coat and you will have to breathe through your ears for the rest of the night. That's not possible, Mommy. Try me. Adrian giggled and went still just long enough for her to finish the zipper, which was the only victory she needed tonight after working a 12-hour shift, closing the bookstore late, and dragging a 3-year-old to a charity gala she had only attended because her best friend Funmi worked event catering and had begged her to come. Look respectable near the dessert table for 10 minutes. Please, I'm short-staffed. Mommy, can we go home now? I want my dinosaur. We can go home the second Auntie Funmi stops needing me to look respectable. You don't look respectable. You look tired. Thank you, Adrian. Very kind. Very supportive of your only parent. He grinned up at her, all gap teeth and mischief, and she felt the familiar lurch in her chest that happened every single time he smiled like that, because it wasn't her smile. It had never been her smile. It was his father's, Zhangfu, a man he'd never seen. She didn't let herself finish that thought. She never did. A few feet away, near the staff exit where she ducked out to escape the noise of the ballroom, a black car idled at the curb with its engine humming low and expensive. She didn't pay it any attention. She should have. Zhangfu had spent the last 40 minutes perfecting the art of looking present while being completely absent, a skill he had built over 3 years of charity galas, board dinners, and his mother's increasingly aggressive attempts to introduce him to appropriate women, which was her phrase, not his, and which made him want to set the centerpieces on fire every time she used it. Tonight's escape route had been blocked by his cousin Lin in a red dress, watching him across the ballroom with the patient, hungry expression of a woman who believed enough time had passed that he might have forgotten what she'd done. He had not forgotten. He would never forget. Bring the car around, he told his assistant, and slipped out through the side entrance before Lin could close the distance, because some fights weren't worth having in front of 300 witnesses with champagne flutes. What he didn't see was Lin watching him go, her expression sliding from hunger to calculation, her phone already rising to her ear before he'd cleared the door. Outside, the autumn air smelled like the river and exhaust and somewhere, faintly, like rain. He loosened his tie and let himself breathe for the first time all evening. Then he heard her voice. Hold still, my love, or I will zip your nose into this coat. Every cell in his body went still. He told himself it was impossible before he even turned his head, because grief did this sometimes, conjured her voice out of strangers and traffic noise and the particular hush of cold evenings, and he had learned 3 years ago not to trust it. He turned his head anyway. Dark braids. A simple emerald dress. The exact angle she always held her shoulders when she was concentrating on something small and important. His heart forgot how to work correctly. Mommy, can we go home now? I want my dinosaur. The boy turned, and Zhangfu stopped breathing entirely. Dark almond eyes. His eyes. Staring out of a small, soft, 3-year-old face that belonged to no one else on earth, but should have, somehow, belonged to him. Miracle rose. Turned. Their eyes met across 20 feet of pavement, and the air between them turned to glass. Recognition. Then something that hit him harder than any blow ever had. Fear. She stepped in front of the boy so fast it was less a decision than a reflex, the same reflex a mother bird has when a hawk's shadow crosses the nest. Miracle. Her name came out of him broken, barely a word at all. She didn't wait to hear anything else. She scooped Adrian up, he laughed, delighted, thinking it was a game, and ran. Miracle. People turned to stare at the untouchable chairman of Hung Yuan Motors sprinting down a hotel driveway in a $3,000 suit, shouting a name into the night like it was the only word he had left. A silver car pulled away from the curb. Tires screamed. Taillights dissolved into the river of traffic along the bund, and then there was nothing. Nothing except a stunned assistant jogging up behind him, saying, Chairman Lin, sir, are you all right?
He was not all right.
He had spent 3 years convinced the worst thing that ever happened to him was losing her. He had just learned there was something worse. Losing a son he never knew existed, twice, in the same 5 minutes. Drive, he said when he finally got into the car, voice flat and far away. Where to, sir? I don't care. Anywhere.
Just drive.
The city blurred past the windows while his mind ran its own frantic calculations. The boy's age, the timeline, the divorce. The night Miracle had complained of feeling unwell, and he had dismissed it as her trying to avoid another argument. She had been pregnant. She had walked out of his life pregnant and alone, and he had spent 3 years feeling sorry for himself in a penthouse the size of a small country while she built an entire universe for their child without him in it. He called his head of security before the car had even crossed the bridge. I need everything from the hotel's exterior cameras. Plate number on a silver sedan. Last 20 minutes. Traffic feeds, GPS, whatever you have to pull. Understood, sir. Find her, Zhangfu said, and his voice cracked on the last word in a way it had not cracked since he was 12 years old and his father died. Find them both. He hung up. He did not know that 2 floors above the Gala, his cousin Lin stood at a window overlooking the driveway, having watched the entire scene unfold with her own eyes. The woman, the boy, the chairman on his knees in the headlights. She smiled, slow and satisfied, and made a different phone call entirely. She's back, Lin said quietly into the phone. And there's a child. We need to make sure she disappears again. Permanently this time. Outside, Shanghai glittered, indifferent and enormous. Inside, something in Zhangfu that had gone quiet 3 years ago had just, violently, woken back up. He had no idea he wasn't the only one looking for Miracle Chitty tonight. The file landed on his desk 5 days later, slim and unremarkable, the kind of folder that should not have been capable of destroying a grown man. It destroyed him anyway. We found her, sir. Zhangfu waited until the door closed before he opened it, because some things a person should be allowed to fall apart over in private. Photographs spilled across the mahogany. Not the curated, glittering miracle from magazine pages and his mother's disapproving dinner parties. A real woman. Tired. Quiet. Carrying grocery bags up a narrow stairwell in Jing'an, a thin coat pulled tight against the wind. Walking a small boy to daycare, his hand swallowed in hers. Sitting alone behind the counter of a modest bookstore long after closing, balancing figures under a desk lamp, the kind of exhaustion that lived in the shoulders and never fully left. She had refused his severance, built the bookstore from nothing, worked 6 days a week, asked for nothing from him. Not once, not ever. In every photo that included Adrian, her whole face changed. The tiredness dropped away. Only love remained. Zhangfu put his head in his hands at his own desk and wept like he hadn't since boyhood. She hadn't run because she was guilty. She had run to protect their son from a family that would have made him feel exactly as unwelcome as they had made her feel for 6 years. He needed to see his son. Late on a Tuesday, dressed down in a plain sweater and a baseball cap that made his driver visibly question his sanity, Zhangfu sat on a park bench with his security detail held 3 blocks back, against every instinct his team had. He saw them arrive, Miracle in a beige trench coat, Adrian racing ahead, chasing leaves with the kind of enthusiasm only available to people under the age of 5. A ball rolled toward Zhangfu's feet. Adrian chased it, stopped a few feet away, and regarded the stranger on the bench with open curiosity. Zhangfu picked it up, held it out. "Thank you, mister," Adrian said very seriously, like a small diplomat. "You're welcome." His voice nearly didn't survive the sentence. "I'm Adrian. I'm 3. 3 fingers, held up with great pride. That's very impressive. I can count to 20. And I know all the dinosaurs. The T-Rex is my favorite because he's the loudest." A roar followed, immediate and enormous for someone so small, and several nearby parents laughed. Zhangfu laughed too. A real one. The first in longer than he could remember. He crouched to the boy's height, and up close the resemblance nearly flattened him. Not just the eyes, the whole architecture of the small, serious face. "Adrian." Miracle's voice sliced across the park, sharp with a fear that had nothing to do with strangers and everything to do with him specifically. She reached them in seconds, pulling Adrian behind her with the same fierce instinct from the hotel. Don't touch him. The ball rolled here. We were only talking. I said don't touch him. Her eyes burned. Beneath the anger, something raw. You lost the right to make promises to me 3 years ago. I would never hurt him. You have no rights where my son is concerned. She softened instantly for Adrian, voice gentling. Come on, sweetheart, we're going. But my ball. We'll get another one. She walked him away without a second glance, and Zhangfu stood frozen on the grass, watching the only 2 people who mattered disappear down the path. He didn't follow, but near the bench, half hidden in the grass, a small juice pouch lay forgotten, straw still attached. He stared at it a long time before he picked it up with a clean handkerchief. What he didn't notice was the man in the gray jacket on the opposite bench, who had been there before Zhangfu arrived and stayed after he left, watching everything through sunglasses, thumbs moving quickly over his phone. The lab results arrived the following evening while Zhangfu sat alone in his dark apartment with an untouched glass of whiskey sweating quietly beside him. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. The tablet slipped from his hand and cracked against the floor. He didn't move to pick it up. His son. He stood, already reaching for his coat, already rehearsing what he would say to her. He would go tonight. He wouldn't wait until morning, wouldn't risk one more day of her thinking she was alone in this. He had no idea that, 6 kilometers away, his cousin was already 3 steps ahead of him. Miracle was locking the bookstore's front register when the bell above the door chimed, 20 minutes after she'd flipped the sign to closed. We're closed, I'm sorry. I know. I waited for you to be alone. The woman who stepped fully into the light was elegant in a specific, weaponized way that money taught people to be elegant. A coat that cost more than Miracle's monthly rent, heels silent on the old wooden floor, a smile that had been practiced in front of a mirror until it looked almost real. Miracle's hand stilled on the register drawer. Something in her body recognized the danger before her mind caught up. You don't remember me, the woman said.
Lin.
Zhangfu's cousin. We met once, years ago, at a dinner you weren't really welcome at, if I'm being honest, which I find I prefer to be these days. What do you want? To save you some time. And some heartbreak, though I suspect that ship has already sailed twice in your case. Lin walked slowly along the shelves, trailing one finger across the spines like she was browsing instead of hunting. Zhangfu saw you at the gala. He saw the boy. I assume you've worked that part out already since you ran. Miracle's jaw tightened. How do you know that? Because I was there. I watched him chase you down the driveway like a man in a drama. Lin finally turned to face her fully. Do you know what happened after that, Miracle? He told his mother. That same night. I heard them on the phone. I don't believe you. You don't have to. You can simply wait and find out, the way you found out the last time, after it was already too late to protect yourself. Lin set a slim folder on the counter, deliberately, the way someone sets down a winning hand. She's already spoken to the family's lawyers. Quietly. About what happens if a child like that ever tries to claim anything that belongs to this family, the company, the apartment, the name. She used the word liability. I believe she also used the word embarrassment, though I might be misremembering the order. Miracle didn't open the folder. Her hands had gone very still on the counter, the particular stillness of someone holding herself together by main force. You did this before, Miracle said quietly. You forged documents. You destroyed our marriage with lies, and it nearly cost me everything, and now you expect me to just believe you again. I expect nothing. Lin's smile didn't move. I'm simply telling you what I know, because unlike certain people in this family, I don't enjoy watching a child get hurt for things that aren't his fault. Call it a guilty conscience if you like the idea of me having one. She moved toward the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. Ask yourself one question, Miracle. How much are you willing to bet your son's entire life on the hope that this family has changed in 3 years? Because I have known them considerably longer than you have, and I would not make that bet myself. The bell chimed again as she left. Miracle stood alone in the dim bookstore for a long time, the folder unopened in front of her, the closed sign still swinging faintly on its hook. She didn't sleep that night. She thought about Zhangfu's mother, who had never once said her name correctly in 6 years on purpose, who had called her the help to her face at a dinner party and laughed when Miracle's hands shook pouring the wine. She thought about the foyer, the forged papers, the silence that had answered her one question. She thought about how easily, how completely, that family had once decided who she was and acted on it without a single moment of doubt. She did not think she was being paranoid. She thought she was finally being careful enough. By morning she had packed 2 suitcases, closed the bookstore account, and bought 2 tickets to Lagos. She told herself it wasn't running. It was leaving before someone else decided, again, what her son's life was allowed to be worth. The call came into Zhangfu's security office at 9 the next morning. He listened to it standing in his kitchen, coffee going cold on the counter. "She's at Pudong Airport, sir. 2 one-way tickets. She's closed the bookstore account. The apartment's already empty. When's the flight?" "Tomorrow morning." The mug slipped from his hand and shattered against the tile. He didn't look down at it. He had no idea why she'd suddenly accelerated a decision she hadn't made in 3 years of hiding successfully. He only knew he had perhaps 24 hours to stop a mistake he didn't yet understand the shape of. He was in the boardroom an hour later. Lawyers and board members and a delegation of European executives arranged around the mahogany table waiting for his signature on the largest acquisition of his career. "Chairman Lin, the delegates are ready." He looked at the contracts. For most of his life, this had been the entire definition of winning. "I'm not signing." Silence dropped over the room like a blade. "Sir, I'm withdrawing from the deal." "Chairman, the penalties alone could cost billions." "Then let it cost billions." He removed his jacket, laid it over the back of his chair with a calm that did not match the panic clawing up his throat. "I've spent my whole life chasing numbers. It left me with an empty home."
Handle it.
"Use my personal assets if you need to." He was already walking. "I have somewhere more important to be." He took his own keys and drove through Shanghai traffic with a recklessness that would have alarmed him on any other day. He turned onto her street, and his stomach dropped through the floor of the car. A yellow airport taxi idled outside her building, trunk open, a suitcase already loaded. Miracle stood beside it, holding Adrian's small hand. He was out of the car before it had fully stopped. "Miracle." She turned. Fear instant and total, then her arm pulling Adrian closer. "What are you doing here? You followed me?" "Please." He closed the distance at a near run. "Don't get in that car. You already made your choice 3 years ago. And now your mother's already talking to lawyers about my son's place in this family, isn't she? Don't bother lying, Zhangfu. Lin already told me everything." He stopped dead in the street. "Lin came to you?" "Last night. At the bookstore." "And you believed her?" "Why wouldn't I? She's been right before. About the documents, about the photographs." Miracle's voice cracked. Everything she said 3 years ago turned out to be a lie, but everyone believed her then too, including you. So forgive me for not waiting around to find out which version of the truth your family decides to use this time. Miracle, listen to me. He held both hands up, empty, no closer than he had to be. "I have not spoken one word to my mother about Adrian. Not one. I found out he was mine 5 days ago, and the only person I have told is my head of security, because I needed to find you both before anyone else did. Whatever Lin said to you in that bookstore, she said it because she watched us at the gala and understood exactly what it would cost her if we found our way back to each other." "Cost her what?" "Her shares. Her position in the company. 3 years ago, she forged evidence against you to protect a business deal that depended on my marrying into the Sun family instead. I never told you that part because I didn't fully understand it myself until after you'd already gone. If she sees me reconciling with you and our son now, every lie she's built her position on since starts unraveling. She came to you last night not because she has a conscience, Miracle. She came because she's protecting herself the exact same way she always has." Miracle stared at him, and he watched something shift behind her eyes. The same calculation she must have run 100 times in the last 3 years, except this time landing somewhere different. "Prove it," she said quietly. "I will. Today, if you let me." I'll have my legal team pull every record of her financial activity going back 5 years, and you can watch them do it. But please. His voice broke on the word. Don't get on that plane before I've had the chance to show you. Don't let her win twice using the same lie. Mommy. Adrian tugged her hand, looking between them with a seriousness only small children manage. Why does he look sad when he sees me? The question went straight through her. She looked down at her son, then at the taxi, then, finally, at the man kneeling now on the pavement in front of her, his composure completely gone. I was wrong about everything 3 years ago, Zhangfu said. I chose pride over trust, and I pushed you away first because I was afraid of exactly this, of not being enough, of you leaving anyway. And while I sat in that penthouse feeling sorry for myself, you carried our son completely alone and built an entire life without ever once asking me for anything. I can't undo that. I'm not asking you to forgive me today. I'm asking you not to let the same woman destroy us twice. Miracle closed her eyes for a long moment. Then she turned to the driver. I'm sorry. We won't be going to the airport. Zhangfu's head dropped, shoulders shaking with relief. He didn't try to hide. Miracle crouched in front of him and brushed a tear from his cheek with one careful thumb. If you're lying to me, she said, I will disappear so completely this time that not even your money will find us.
Do you understand that?
I understand. We are not going back to your old life. I will never again live somewhere I merely tolerated, and neither will he.
Never.
If we do this, we start completely from the beginning. Anything. It took 11 days for the forensic accountants to find what Zhangfu already suspected, a pattern of falsified board minutes and a forged supplier contract from 3 years earlier, the same contract Lin had used to fabricate the financial transfers that destroyed his marriage in the first place. The Sun family deal had collapsed months after the divorce anyway, which meant Lin had sacrificed a marriage, a wife, and 3 years of a child's life for a partnership that never even closed. She was removed from the board within the month. Her shares were frozen pending litigation. She never came near the bookstore or Miracle or Adrian again. Healing after that did not arrive with apologies. It arrived slowly, in ordinary things. Zhangfu stepped back from the company's daily grind. He cut ties with the relatives who had poisoned his marriage, and when his mother refused to accept Miracle back into the family, he chose his wife without a single moment of hesitation. Their new life was built from coffee runs to her bookstore, burn attempts at jollof rice that filled his kitchen with smoke and her laughter, bedtime stories he learned by heart, and scraped knees he bandaged himself. A year later, in a Shanghai park under a wide autumn sky, Adrian ran with a bright red kite snapping behind him while Miracle leaned into Zhangfu's shoulder. He's going to wear himself out before dinner, she said, smiling. Impossible. He has enough energy for 3 children. I wonder where he gets that from. No idea. Of course you don't. The kite crashed into the grass. Adrian's face lit up anyway.
Dad.
Did you see? I flew it. He abandoned the kite entirely and sprinted toward them. Zhangfu dropped to one knee just in time to catch his son mid-leap, spinning him until the boy shrieked with laughter that carried clean across the park. When he finally looked up, Miracle was watching them both with tears standing in her eyes. Happy ones, the kind that had taken 3 hard years, one cousin's last desperate lie, and one chosen leap of faith to finally earn. He reached for her hand. She took it without hesitation.
The end.